Welcome to the Digital Studio, everyone. I am your master coach, and today we are diving deep into an absolute masterclass on Cambridge AS and A-level accounting, specifically Syllabus 9706. Our target? Control account reconciliation statements. This isn't just a basic review. This is an elite, high-stakes explainer. We are looking squarely through the examiner's lens to uncover exactly where you are losing marks and how to instantly reclaim them. Now, to make this interactive, I brought in two of my top scholars. Alex, who is incredibly technical, an absolute machine with formulas and facts, but sometimes struggles with open-ended evaluation. Alex, how are you feeling about today's session?
Honestly, Coach, I'm ready. I can balance a ledger in my sleep, but the moment a question asks me to evaluate the effectiveness of a control account, I kind of freeze up. I need to figure out how to translate my technical skills into those higher-tier essay marks.
Exactly why you're here, Alex. And we also have Sam. Sam is a highly creative thinker, fantastic at building arguments, but often hits a wall when it comes to structural precision and strict exam timing. Sam, what's your goal for this masterclass?
Hey, Coach, yeah, for me, I can see the big picture. I know why the business needs these reconciliations, but I get totally bogged down in the layout, and before I know it, I've spent 20 minutes on a 10-mark question. I need that structural blueprint.
Perfect. Between the three of us, we are going to dissect complex questions, master your time allocation, and deploy critical thinking strategies that examiners practically beg for. Let's get right into it. Look at this quote from a recent senior examiner's report on the interactive board. It says, "Most students lose easy marks on control account reconciliation statements." Let that sink in. These are easy marks. It's a startling truth. It is almost never a lack of innate accounting knowledge that trips you up. It is foundational errors, procedural missteps, and completely misunderstanding the command words. Let me prove it. I'm pulling up a complex, high-tariff 15-mark sample question on the holographic smartboard right now. Here it is. Evaluate the impact of omitting a contra entry on both the sales ledger control account and the schedule of debtors, and advise management on immediate rectifications. Now, Alex, when you see a 15-mark question like that, what's your first instinct?
My instinct is to just jump straight into the T accounts. I'd start calculating the revised balance and listing out where the contra entry should go. I want to prove I know the mechanics.
And that right there is exactly why candidates get capped at a mid-tier grade. You are ignoring the anatomy of the command word. The prompt doesn't say calculate. It says evaluate and advise. If you just give me the numbers, you are actively ignoring the hidden constraints of the prompt. We need to deeply contrast analyze versus evaluate, and explain versus to what extent. An analyze question wants you to break down the mechanics, how the contra entry works. But an evaluate question? That requires judgment. You have to look at the numbers, determine their significance to the business, and provide a justified conclusion. You are essentially diagnosing a problem and prescribing a cure. After today's session, you won't be leaving those marks on the table. To demystify this entire process, we're going to break down our analysis into three logical, highly structured steps. First, we'll establish the core accounting principles. Second, we'll walk through the procedural framework. And finally, we will expose the examiner traps and insights. Let's keep moving.
All right, let's start with Section 1, Core Accounting Principles. This is a theoretical architecture you absolutely need to build a solid foundation before you ever touch a calculator.
Welcome to our Digital Study Suite. I'm taking out my digital highlighter here on the board. We are isolating the exact content knowledge required. Principal examiner reports explicitly state that candidates constantly confuse key terminology. You must establish causal relationships. Let's look at that 15-mark question again. It's time for our peer deconstruction debate. Sam, Alex, take it away. How are we tackling the definitions here? Okay, so the question is about a contra entry omission. If we want to establish a cross-topic connection, we should start by defining what a contra entry actually is in the context of both the sales and purchases ledgers. It's when a business is both a customer and a supplier to the same entity, right? So we need to set off the balances. Right, but do we really need to write out a dictionary definition? I say we just show the adjustment. Debit the sales ledger control account, credit the purchases ledger control account, boom. Causal relationship established through the double entry. I disagree, Alex. If we just show the double entry, we are hitting Assessment Objective 1, Knowledge and Understanding, and maybe AO2 for application. But we completely miss AO3, which is Analysis and Evaluation. To get AO3, we have to explain why the omission creates a discrepancy between the control account and the schedule of debtors. But the numbers speak for themselves. If the control account is overstated by, say, $500 and the schedule is also overstated, it balances out eventually once corrected. Let me jump in here. Sam is hitting the nail on the head regarding the marking bands. Alex, your technical approach is absolutely crucial, but it's only the first layer. The examiner wants to see you translate that mathematical reality into a business reality. You have to clearly define your terms to prove you understand the causal relationship. Why did the contra entry fail? Was it a breakdown in internal controls? That is how you connect this topic to the broader syllabus and unlock the top-tier marking bands.
Let's continue the debate, looking directly at superficial breadth versus analytical depth. Average answers are wide and shallow. Top-tier answers are narrow and incredibly deep.
This makes sense. So, superficial breadth would be if I just listed every possible error that could occur in a control account. Transposition errors, omission, casting errors, hoping the examiner gives me a mark for knowing the types of errors.
Yeah, and that's usually what I do when I panic. I just brain dump everything I know about the topic.
But analytical depth means I need to take just the one error, the contra-entry omission, and trace its impact all the way down to the final financial statements, right?
Exactly. Like, how does the overstatement of trade receivables affect the current ratio? Or how does it impact the provision for doubtful debts?
Okay, actually, scratch that. It's more like, if the trade receivables are artificially inflated, the business might think its liquidity is much better than it actually is. That could lead to disastrous management decisions regarding cash flow.
Outstanding. Do you both see what just happened? Alex, you just naturally shifted from AO2 application to AO3 evaluation. You didn't just solve the math, you analyzed the business consequence. You challenged the initial interpretation and dug deeper. That is exactly what examiners mean by analytical depth. They don't just want you to memorize, they want you to apply evidence-based reasoning to whatever tangled scenario the exam throws at you. You have to prove that you see the whole financial picture. Top candidates weave a narrative out of the numbers.
With those core principles deeply set, we are moving to Section 2, the procedural framework. Let's see how this theoretical knowledge builds into a concrete, executable exam room strategy.
Okay, before we dive into the most intense part of our problem-solving session, I need to pause the masterclass for a quick, crucial message. If you are serious about securing an A-star in Cambridge accounting, you cannot afford to miss out on these weekly strategies. I want you to hit that subscribe button for Ace the Exam's IGCSA O and A levels at the handle @AceTheExam_IGCSE. And absolutely make sure you click that notification bell so you never miss a breakthrough strategy. You can see the animation popping up on your screen right now. We drop elite examiner-level hacks every single week, and subscribing is the best way to ensure you are always one step ahead of the curve. All right, let's get back to the digital suite. Alex, Sam, I want you two to actively draft a model response for the 15-mark question on screen, paragraph by paragraph. We are focusing on the method mark strategy. Okay, I'll start the calculation block. I'm listing the original unadjusted balance, then I'm adding the omitted invoice, subtracting the dishonored check. Wait, where do I put the sales journal undercast? The undercast affects the control account, not the individual debtor's account. So that goes in your main T account adjustment. But Alex, look at the time. We've spent 6 minutes just setting up the format, and we haven't even started the written evaluation. I know, but if I don't get this final adjusted balance perfect, the whole evaluation is based on wrong numbers. I'll lose everything. But the method mark strategy says they award marks for the logical process. Even if your final number is off by $100 because of a tiny arithmetic slip, if you clearly show you're working for the undercast and the dishonored check, you still get the process marks. We need to move on and link this to the internal controls paragraph. I'm completely stuck. If I move on without finishing the balance, my structural flow is ruined. How do we link a half-finished calculation to a management recommendation?
Okay, I am using the picture-in-picture feature here to pause your drafting session. Stop writing, both of you take a breath. You have hit a classic roadblock, and it's entirely because your cognitive strategy broke down under time pressure. Alex, you are suffering from perfection paralysis. Sam, you are panicking about the clock. Let's look at the 6-step procedural framework on the interactive board to get you unstuck. Step 1, deconstruct the question. We did that. Step 2, extract relevant data. Step 3, select the analytical framework. Step 4, execute with notation. This is where you are failing, Alex. You are trying to do the math in your head and write the final polished answer simultaneously. You need to use clear notation. Step 5, verify results. Step 6, present correctly. When you hit a wall, you don't just stare at the paper. You explicitly write out your assumption. If you can't balance it, you write, assuming an adjusted balance of X, the subsequent impact on liquidity would be Y. You prove your systematic analysis. Examiners often award more marks for a logically sound documented process with a wrong final number than a correct final number with zero working shown. Let's rewrite that flawed section out loud.
Okay, I see it. Instead of just writing a block of numbers, I'll rewrite the section like this. The initial discrepancy of $500 was identified. By applying the method of adjusting the sales ledger control account for the journal undercast of $200 and adjusting the schedule of debtors for the invoice omission of $300, the records reconcile.
That is so much better. It explicitly states the process. Now I'll handle the evaluation link. All right, Because the original schedule was overstated, it temporarily masked a liquidity issue. Management should immediately implement a dual verification control on all contra entries before the end of the financial period to prevent this reporting error from recurring.
Boom, flawless. Look at the transition you two just made. You moved from standard problem solving, which just stops when a number is generated, to the higher order deconstruct, solve, evaluate framework. You didn't just balance the books, you checked for reasonableness and made a justified recommendation. You proposed a new internal control, the dual verification process. You proved your reasoning on the page. That right there is a full mark response. It's not about being a human calculator, it's about being a strategic financial advisor.
All right, let's pull back the curtain for Section 3, Examiner Traps and Insights. This is where we look directly at the most common pitfalls identified by Cambridge examiners so you can avoid them entirely.
Now I want you, the viewer, to get deeply involved. We are shifting into an immersive, interactive pause and practice workshop. Okay, look at the interactive board right now. I'm throwing up visual question 1. It's a complex reconciliation graph showing a massive divergence between the control account and the ledger over a 6-month period. We're starting a 60-second countdown timer on the screen right now. I want you to mentally identify which of the top 3 exam mistakes would cause a student to misinterpret this graph. Mistake 1, using the wrong approach for the context. Mistake 2, forgetting format and presentation checks. Mistake 3, giving generic answers lacking context. Time's up. The trap here is mistake 1. If you apply a standard month-end reconciliation formula to a 6-month trend analysis, you completely miss the context. Now let's load up visual question 2, spot the flaw. Look at this poorly written student answer on the board. It says, the business should improve controls to stop errors from happening. What is wrong with that? I am systematically highlighting it in red right now. It is the epitome of mistake 3. It is a terribly generic answer lacking any context. It could apply to a bakery, a multinational bank, or a shoe store. To get the marks, you must anchor your answers specifically to the data given in the prompt. You must say, the business should implement immediate managerial sign-off on all sales returns above $500 to resolve the specific discrepancy identified in the December ledger. Context is king. And finally, never forget your format. If your reconciliation looks like a frantic sketch on a napkin, examiners will strip away your professional skills marks without hesitation.
We are entering the final phase of the masterclass, our strategy recap. Alex, Sam, what are your personal breakthroughs from this session? For me, it's realizing that the math is just the foundation. I have to stop chasing the perfect final number at the expense of my structural process. Showing the method mark working is literally a safety net for my grade. And for me, it's that deconstruct, solve, evaluate framework. I don't have to panic about the blank page anymore. I just follow the 6 steps and make sure my evaluation is hyper-specific to the business context, not just generic fluff. Brilliant. To synthesize this entire masterclass, I'm giving you 3 core memorable pillars to take into the exam room. First, the 3-step question scan. Before you write a single word, isolate the command word, identify the context, and note the mark allocation. Second, the paragraph balance formula. Every evaluation paragraph must contain 1 specific data point from the stimulus, 1 accounting principle, and 1 justified business impact. Third, the last 5 minutes review checklist. Use those final minutes solely to check your formats, your terminology, and ensure you haven't left any calculation working undocumented. And to help lock this in, use a visual story method. Imagine a physical folder of receipts moving step by step through a factory assembly line until it becomes a polished final statement. By creating this mental narrative, you bypass the immense cognitive load during the exam. The procedural framework will intuitively come back to you under pressure.
So, as we wrap up this masterclass, I leave you with this provocative question. If examiners clearly value the analytical process and your systematic reasoning over just getting the final calculation right, how exactly are you going to restructure your revision starting today? Are you going to keep mindlessly grinding through T accounts, or are you going to start practicing how to prove your logic on the page? The choice is absolutely yours, but the examiner is waiting to see your reasoning. Crushing Cambridge exams doesn't happen by accident. It requires relentless, consistent strategy. If you want to keep elevating your game, I need you to hit that subscribe button for Ace the Exam's IGCSE O&A levels at acetheexam_IGCSE. Turn on the notification bell so you are immediately alerted when our next exam hack drops. And right now, I want you to go down to the comments and publicly declare your target grade. Put it out there and let's get to work. Stay strategic, stay focused, and I will see you in the next explainer.